Welcome to Universal Design Stories of Change. This podcast series aims to gather the experiences of persons with disabilities in Norway and internationally in order to gain a greater understanding of the benefits of universal design for persons with disabilities and everyone. We would like to thank the Norwegian Directorate for Children, Youth, and Families for their support, and the amazing team from Inclusive Creation for making it all happen. Enjoy this episode. I love this idea about working on our etiquette. And one of the things I found out recently was that I think there was a study in the UK where a lot of people feel inhibited from kind of connecting to a person with a disability because they're afraid of doing something wrong, or they're afraid of saying something wrong. And so I'm just wondering, what's your take on this? Like, how can we find some sort of balance between someone being like, oh, I just don't even know how to approach someone, to maybe them also not just grabbing somebody's wheelchair and trying to quote unquote help them, right? Because we have that, the other side of the spectrum is that, oh, you're a person with a disability, you need me
Yeah.
to hold your hand and everything in life. So where's that balance point for you, and what kind of advice would you put out there?
Now, for me, the balance point is actually it's a shared responsibility. It's a responsibility from the disability community, but it's also responsibility from the global community, because we all have to come together on this one. People with a disability should say which if they feel offended or if it's not right. But the people without a disability also have to accept when people explain, because a lot of cases when, for example, in the example you gave, grabbing a wheelchair or grabbing somebody by the arm because they're blind and you want to prevent them to enter the wrong door at the bus stop, for example. Make
Mm-hmm.
sure if that person says, hey, I don't like this, it's not because they are mad at you, but they are offended because you enter their personal space. We all don't like when people enter your personal space without questioning.
Yeah.
And given what I have known from the Norwegian culture, it's a severe breach of personal boundaries just to touch anyone.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, but that's an important thing, because for example, in Spain, it's a whole different discussion because people are more touchy, and then it's harder even for people with a disability to say, don't do this. And
Mm.
actually, and that's maybe a positive part about the Norwegian culture, because actually it is quite normal to say, I don't like you touching me. And
Mm.
then it would not, but that's the problem, I think. It's the combination of people with a disability. Um, every time you have to take, and I really like to rephrase that on what's his name? Ooh, that's what. I forgot his name. I have to look that up for you. But John D. Camp. He wrote a book which is called, and I have it right here. Oh, where is it? I have it here, somewhere. But John D. Camp wrote a really good book about disability inclusion, and he refers to taking another one for the cause. And taking another one for the cause is really about, again, being grabbed by a wheelchair, being grabbed by your arm, or having to explain that a disability does not exclude you. Sometimes you get tired from that. But on the other side, if we don't take another one for the cause, we cannot explain the abled world what it means to have a disability and what
Right.
it means if your space is entered all the time and you don't feel free and you don't feel safe anymore. And I
Mm.
think that's one of the key elements in working together. So I don't have an exact answer to say, okay, we can solve this,
Mm.
except for accept both sides, that we have to speak out as person with a disability if we don't like it, and the abled world needs to accept that we can say which the things we don't like and don't feel offended by it, but say, okay, next time I know, thank you for that. And next time I know also means that if you happen to be in the same kind of situation next time, you
Mm.
ask first for if a person needs help. Can
Mm.
I help you? Just a simple question.
Yeah, it's about consent, right? It's not even about like understanding necessarily another person's need for kind of space, but it's just about saying, hey, Is it okay if I do this? Or do you need help with this? Or is there anything I can do?
Exactly. And
Yeah.
that's it. But that
Right.
really comes with accepting from that's why it's both sides are needed in this.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Because going up a hill without in your wheelchair without support mechanism can be a
Mm,
very challenging thing.
of
On the
course.
other side, somebody might do it because she is training for whatever sport. I mean, that's
Sure.
also a possibility. You could also be
Yeah.
training
Yeah.
for whatever.
Yeah.
So you never can just assume. Maybe
Yeah.
that's the best advice. Never assume.
Never assume. I love it. I love it. As a takeaway for this conversation, we're putting that right up there. Look, I only have a couple more questions. Number one here, is there anything that you have as a pet project or things that you'd like to bring across to our audience here? Anything you'd like to say to them and to kind of help them along their journey?
Yeah, I think one of the things is which I recently published, and maybe you can share the link on the website because I
Absolutely.
published a research paper, and it's a first research paper actually. It's called it's about technically it is about digital literacy and accessibility for persons with disability, and it's called When Accessibility Meets Access To. And what we see is we have a strong digitalizing world and it's going really fast. And what we see now happening more and more often is that digital illiteracy and disability are being pushed together. And
Mm, mm,
as a person with a disability, I don't need explaining how the website works because the button doesn't work and I want to fix that button to be fixed instead
right.
of having a whole explanation in how that app functions and what steps I need to make. The person experiencing digital literacy needs to have that information. So
Yeah.
my call is really for any business to make sure that you look at the group you want to target and target them separate.
Mm,
Yes, people with experiencing digital literacy benefit from accessibility for
mm,
persons with disabilities, but you have to make sure that you reach them out the right way because people with a disability need fixing. They need functional, accessible solutions. People with
yes.
this digital illiteracy really need support to know how to do things. So it's about education. And that's,
Mm,
I think, one of the key things. So from that perspective, that's one. And I think
mhm,
the second one is about I think, and that's fun. You know what I really hope to see, and that would be really nice. And it's not a bad project, but it's really what I like to see myself. I'm a traveler. I like to travel around, and
right.
what I would really like to see is that it's more clear to find accessible camping grounds or accessible paths. It's
Yeah.
because I know it's there, but it's not
Mhm,
always visible. And
mm,
often it's thought about, okay, we have an accessible toilet, for example, but then people forget there's people who are hard of hearing or people who have low vision. So it's the focus is not always on the whole community of
yeah.
disabilities. It's only on a small portion of that. And it would be so nice if it would be clear what kind of services you can get. Is a, for example, a map can be accessible in a digital format. Is it also available for free or is it only available for free on paper? That's things like that. Make it easy to find things. I see a lot of things growing and it's a lot better than it used to be. But accessible travel is, I think, one of the things that could really benefit everybody.
And it could be one of the most empowering things for someone with a disability to kind of have an experience to, grow beyond the borders of their town, village, country,
No,
however you.
exactly, because the very simple thing, traveling with with a disability, it's always challenging. You never know what's coming first. I mean, I know when I travel for work to the US to go to a conference, I know everything is well arranged and it's not a problem. But I also ran into issues in other countries that I was like, okay, and now I'm stuck. So from that perspective, it's really different where you go. But I really like there are very good examples. I mean, if I travel to Norway, we go camping every year, and a lot of the times we also go to Norway. So from that perspective, the fun part, you can find an accessible toilet on top of a mountain when you're driving around. That's a very cool example because in a lot of countries they don't even have accessible toilets in the city center. I mean,
Right.
from that
Let alone in the
perspective,
countryside.
yes,
Mm.
exactly, let alone on the countryside. So from that perspective, they're really nice things. But on the other side, if I, for example, go hiking and there's a sign, a lot of the signs for me are really hard to read. And it would be so cool if you have a QR code which you can scan with your phone, and then you get a map
Oh
which
my
can
gosh.
be which works with your screen reader, for
Yeah.
example.
Could
So
you
you
imagine?
can take a route. That would be so great because it makes life for me a lot easier. And that's those would be things. I mean, I don't have the time to do them, but I would love to see them.
It's amazing. I wonder if you could just wrap up now by giving our listeners an optimistic question to kind of ponder as they finish out this episode.
An optimistic question. Ah, that's a good one. I am an optimist. Um, but I do think there's one question I think we have to ask ourselves, all of us working in accessibility and person with a disability.
Hmm.
Is accessibility ever finished? And to be honest, I'm really optimistic. It's
Yeah.
not.
Yeah.
But in an optimistic way, because it means that we keep learning about all the things people with disabilities can do.
Yeah.
And we have to keep on learning on that one. And in the end, I think a disability should never make any barrier for you to become what you want to be. If it's the president, if it's CEO or whatever. And for that, that's why I asked this question: is accessibility ever done?
Mm. And I mean, just to add on to that before we close, it's in keeping with our concept of disability as being an evolving identity.
Yes.
What disability was 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 50 years ago is a very different thing than what we think of as disability today. And it will be different again in 20 years.
Oh, exactly. When I was in high school, they told me you could not go to university because you cannot follow college because you cannot follow on the big screen on the end of the room, that part, or you cannot work with a computer. And look where I am now. I mean, I am studying at the university, and it's not going fast, but that has to do with my limited energy levels. But I am studying at university. I am doing research as an accessibility expert. I am working as a senior within one of the largest European banks, meaning that there is a lot possible.
That's
But for
incredible.
that, you still have to be lucky. And I
Mm,
don't want people to be lucky for that. I want it to make a normal way of going,
mm.
business as usual.
Bianca, you're an absolute gem. I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to us. And thank you, thank you, thank you.
You're welcome to. Thank you.